To discuss that a bit further, we're joined by Stephen Lindman, writer and radio host, who's joining us now via Skype from Chicago. Mr. Lindman, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, I want to ask you about that line that SAS and MI6 agents are getting ready to help armed gangs if civil war erupts in Syria. Now, do you think that these agents will really wait for civil war to erupt in Syria, or are they just planning for something on their own anyhow?
Well, there's no question that they're in Syria, but this is not new news. There may be new information about this, but back, I believe, in February, I wrote that U.S., U.K., and other special forces, Western, probably Qatari special forces, were on the ground helping these militants, these insurgents, these killer gangs. You can give them any name you like, but they're Western-recruited mercenaries. They're coming from nearby regional countries, some of them not so nearby, Libya, coming from Iraq, Iraq is nearby, coming from Jordan, coming from the March 14 alliance in Lebanon. These are coming in by the thousands. Thousands of them are coming in. You know, they come at different times, and this has been going on for a long time. The same thing happened in Libya last year. The attacks that are being carried out, like the Houla Massacre, these special forces are picking the targets. They are planning the attack. They are sending the insurgents out to commit the atrocities, and Assad is blamed for them.
Right, Mr. Lindman, you know, President Assad himself, in fact, spoke about this real war coming from outside in his speech to the parliament. Does this sort of news then give more evidence to support his claims?
Absolutely. What he's saying is 100% true. And, of course, the Western media, the ones I call the scoundrel media, they refuse to mention this. They say nothing about it. They point fingers the wrong way. The evidence is overwhelming. The Houla Massacre alone, the most egregious incident so far, single incident, the evidence is overwhelming. There's no question. No question. I wrote an article I put out yesterday on a Russian journalist who was an eyewitness to what happened, a man, his last name is Musin. I read it, and my article was called Russian Journalist Exposes Propaganda Lies About Houla Massacre. He was there. He saw it firsthand with his own eyes. He interviewed survivors, eyewitnesses to what happened, and the people who were targeted in Houla families, their homes were raided. These were pro-Assad loyalists, people who were loyal to the Assad government. They were picked out. They were targeted for assassination. Special forces, UK, US, probably Qatari, maybe French, on the ground, picking the targets, directing them. That's the culpability. Assad had absolutely nothing to do with it. Musin said one other thing, too. There was no evidence whatever of artillery fire or tank fire in Houla. There were no damaged buildings. There were no craters on the ground. There was nothing whatsoever to indicate artillery shelling or tank shelling went on. It was a complete fabrication. This was a Western-initiated attack using these armed killers to do it.
So, Mr. Lindman, I'm curious to know then, why is the West holding back on then calling out an all-out war then against the Assad government if they're already carrying out attacks within Syria?
I think it's coming. I honestly think it's coming. I followed the rhetoric since last year. I can feel it heating up. We saw it before. We saw it last year in Libya. We saw it against Iraq, the so-called weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist. It's going on against Syria now. The intensity gets greater and greater. The megaphone comes from the major media, mainly the U.S. major media. Everything from television that has the most effect, from CNN, from Fox News, but the New York Times does this. The Washington Post does this. The key print and broadcast news operations in America are spreading these spurious lies. I think the scheme is if you can get rid of Assad without a war, terrific. Let's do it that way. But if everything tried fails, and everything tried so far has failed, and I really believe it will fail, unless these militants have an air force, the way the Libyan gangs had an air force, they're not going to get rid of Assad. Assad is too strong militarily. So I think there will be direct Western intervention. There may be bombing.
Right.
And there's no question that Washington is orchestrating everything. This is a Washington operation.
Okay, I do apologize for cutting you off there, Mr. Lendman, but it seems that we have run out of time. That was Mr. Stephen Lendman, writer and radio host, joining us via Skype from Chicago. Mr. Lendman, we do appreciate your insight here on Press TV.